It's time to move on. Our last session of the day is one that I've been super excited about all day. It was one of the first ones that I approved whenever I was looking at the list of 20 plus applications. It's going to be about company culture during the pandemic. Obviously, we're going through a lot. It's a super timely session on company culture with startup CEOs and people leaders who will talk through some of the adjustments that they've made, ideas they have and haven't worked on, and responses from their teams. So I'm excited to welcome Adele Archer, Caitlin Connor, Albert Swatner, and Karen Fernandez to the stage. And I'll get out of here. This is a crowded screen, but I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. We're really excited to kind of tell you some of the learnings that we've had and the journeys that we've all been on, and hopefully inspire you guys to help make your companies great. What we're going to talk about today is how we take care of our employees today, how we build a great team culture with all the crazy things going on. Because in our minds, you need to have a really strong foundation at your company before you start recruiting and doing all these other things. Like number one, let's take care of employees. My name is Albert Swatner. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called Mobile Tech RX. We build software for the automotive reconditioning industry. We took a Series A from Silverton last year. We've got about 35 people today. And I'd love for us to go around. Adele, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Adele. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Eternova. And what we do is we celebrate really special people and pets when they pass by making real diamonds from the carbon in their ashes. Overall, our focus is changing a culture around death, grief, and remembrance. We are a seed stage company, currently at 25 people.
Awesome. Caitlin?
Yeah, no, I'm Caitlin Connor. I manage people at Popspots, and we're a retail tech company that's developed an in-store display that retailers and brands use to promote their products and ensure that they're in stock. We call the display Grocery TV, and we're active in over 1,000 grocery retailers across the U.S. We have 17 employees, and we recently just raised our Series A back in November of 2019. So very exciting time for us.
Karen?
Great. I'm Karen Fernandez. So happy to be here today. I have helped scale and lead the people function at 3 different startups, 2 based in Los Angeles, and most recently here at the Guild in Austin. I'm also currently helping a local startup that just closed their seed round this month.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm honored to be here with you three. So I'm so excited to be here. So first of all, if you guys have questions, please throw them in the chat and we'll get them, and I'll kind of sprinkle them throughout. So don't hesitate to ask any questions or clarification or anything. So number one thing I want to talk about first is mental health for a few minutes. Personally, I've had friends that, have nervous breakdowns or are just freaking out in these times. And I think employees are going through a lot, like our team specifically, we have people at all levels and functions and have all types of backgrounds and histories and conditions at home that I may not be aware of. And so how do you support your team in their mental health? Caitlin, I know you guys do some really cool stuff at Popspots.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really important topic because the world is just chaos. And no matter where you touch in your life, what's going on in the world is affecting you. It's just an air of stress and anxiety that's permeating, and it doesn't. You don't leave it. You can't leave it at your home when you go to work anymore because it's all the same. So it's been an interesting challenge to learn how we can better support our team, especially working for a startup, because working for a startup is another added layer of stress. It's very fast paced. There's a lot more on the line, and traditionally in a startup, it's just kind of that go mentality. And I think a huge problem in the tech industry as a whole has been, I think that's there's a quote that, you break things and you just kind of move forward, but you end up breaking people in the process. So we really have tried to break that norm and make sure that we're building our people and making sure that they're healthy and have the best environment for their whole selves. So one thing that really set us up for success to support our employees in whatever way mental health looks like in their life and for what their unique experiences is our culture of one-on-ones. I've heard sometimes that we do it a lot. On average, you have about 2 one-on-ones a week at least. So with me, I touch base at least monthly or if not more with every single employee in our team. Managers are meeting with their team members once a week And that's not a status update. That's not like, how's work, what are you working on? That's how are you? What's going on in your life? And what are you worried about? How can we support you? And those changes have allowed us to make sure that we're staying on the pulse of how everyone is feeling. It fluctuates. One day you're fine. You wake up and you're like, I'm ready to do this. And the next day you're like, I don't know if I can get out of bed. And we're trying to embrace that. That's okay. Productivity is varying drastically on every single level. And then we've also really tried to deploy more burnout resources. So normalizing the conversation, especially on the leadership level, talking about where we're experiencing burnout, allowing that conversation to happen and for that to be comfortable, because that's the first step. We have weekly pulses. So that conversation is happening often. Like, where are you feeling burned out right now? Is that something we can change right now instead of letting it compound? And then maybe that's something that comes out on a monthly survey. And then we're watching that on a company level. So we have started measuring our entire company's average burnout risk, and we use that as a major KPI for the effectiveness of our programs.
That's awesome. I think you bring up some really good points, right? Like as we're more isolated on our own, as our other struggles start to build up, work just becomes kind of a place of refuge, and it's a really powerful time for us to connect with our employees, not just to help them be better employees, but to help them just with all the things that are going on in their lives and just kind of be more full and better people. Karen, I know that that's something that really resonates with you. So like what are some tools that you guys use to help with mental health in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think before I answer that, Albert, I just wanted to mention, for those of you that didn't attend Morgan's session yesterday, she works at Well Timed. She really had a great session on what companies can do for wellness as a whole. So I just wanted to plug her session. I think, what Caitlin said was super important in terms of one-on-ones. I think we also have to remember that we've got to support our managers, right? This is the first time we're asking them to have mental health discussions, or maybe the first time I should say. So we've got to remember that they're folks too. We've got to support them and then give them some tools and resources to be able to do that. And I think when you look at startups in general, the first thing isn't always to go look at the newest tool, like what's the newest platform or who can I go to? You can do things without necessarily having a large budget around it. You just have to make sure that you're looking at where are we as an organization and how can we just start that conversation? And then how can we start adding resources to it?
Awesome. Yeah. Adele, what do you think? What do you guys do at Eternova?
Yeah, love so many of the things that Caitlin mentioned. I would say, it is interesting, from kind of the perspective of being a CEO and realizing the importance of vulnerability, giving people the permission, to have hard days by sharing when I'm having a hard day, or, when I'm exactly as Caitlin was saying, this is what's very difficult, I think, of what all of us are experiencing right now is it's kind of like this ambiguous grief and there's no end in sight. And, we're 6 months in and, it's quite different than anything we've ever experienced before. And so I think all of us are feeling the symptoms of that and it shows itself differently. And, so just normalizing that, it's okay to feel that. And I feel it too. And let's talk about it. We've been so much more cognizant of making sure that's part of our weekly conversations as a leadership team of, where's our team at? Who might be falling off? Who needs a phone call? Who needs a walk? We had a fantastic quarter last quarter. And, it was, I can definitely resonate with the, when you're trying to grow fast and you're doing it through a crazy pandemic, our team did an unbelievable job. And so it's okay, let's take recharge days, beyond just what are regular holidays, let's just take days off, because it's really important. It's really needed. We did one of the things that I think was really well embraced last quarter, a 3-part grief series. Obviously we are in the business of grief wellness. So we talk about grief a lot. We talk about hard emotions a lot. And we had kind of a 3-part series that helped us understand different forms of grief, helped us understand different people's emotional reactions to grief and what that looks like and what it shows up like, identified a little bit more of how we might respond to, whether it's grief or whether it's just stressful situations. And it just facilitated a really great conversation among the team. So I think, practices like meditation and, doing mental health and wellness programming is awesome. And it was just fascinating how a hard topic actually ended up opening a lot of vulnerability amongst us.
That's awesome. I mean, one of the things that you said that really resonates with me is kind of those forced holidays. And so we do that at our company too. It's like we have whole company holidays, day off, where I know everyone's a little bit burned out, but then kind of on an individual basis too, where I can tell someone just needs a break. We'll just take a Friday off. And we have our dev team, like, really love Dungeons and Dragons. Like, they have a little crew and like, hey, we're going to take Friday off and we're just going to do that. And like, everything is going to be okay. We're going to make it. Right. So like, I think that's really critical. One of the things that I kind of is interesting about the pandemic is like, I think it's changing what people value at their workplace, right? So before it was like, oh, beer and ping pong and all these fun things. And now that doesn't exist, right? It's more about mental health and supporting families and kind of making sure you have, which I think is a good direction for us to go, less from like the flashy things that are not meaningful to everyone. So what I want to talk about a little bit is just kind of, what are those things that we do today in engagement and to optimize performance, right? So like, we're taking care of our employees, but then how do we make sure they're performing well at their jobs? I know, Adele, you guys do some interesting recognition programs. Like, can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as possible, we really believe in creating living value set. So not just having our values on a wall, but rather really looking for every opportunity to spot values in action. So every single week, during our weekly meeting, we always end on a section that is a value in action spotlight. And we have this like obnoxiously hilarious flashy diamond piñata that is filled with candy. And whoever received it the last week is the one that gets to, kind of gift it forward. And they'll say, Shelly is just the epitome of get their back. And like, here's exactly what happened last week where I really saw her show through on that. And it's just really cool because it becomes so part of like our natural lingo that we're like, oh, that was so do as you say, or that was so get your back, or be the change. So that's just become kind of part of our routine and our culture. And, then on the heels of that, we always have, dedicated times for shout outs, and just the cross-pollination across teams is amazing. It really helps with like cross-dimensional like appreciation and collaboration. We have a shout outs channel on Slack to make sure that, even through the week, there's every opportunity to be kind of strumming that up. And we have another channel actually that I really love called Love from Customers. And, given the nature of what we do, like we get some like unbelievable messages, just from our customers. They're so incredible. And so, our CX team is the one that usually gets to see those. And so they're wonderful about posting in that channel so that everybody kind of gets that fill your cup, like connection back to the mission and the special work that we're doing. Cause I think that's another thing that's just really important right now is just having some meaning in your work and feeling the contribution elements of what you're working on, in addition to feeling the support of your team and being recognized when you're doing great work.
Yeah, I mean, we do something similar too. At all of our all hands, before that we get nominations from the team for like people who are living our values, and every month we pick a different value, and it's like such a rewarding experience, I think, for someone who is not expected to be awarded and just is kind of here, just be like, oh wow, like someone's recognizing this thing about me, and I think that's really powerful and really kind of helping people keep going. Karen, I know this is another topic that's really passionate about you. How do you get the best out of your team, when things are going crazy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of it is really making sure that there is that transparency and you are sharing with your entire employee population what's going on. They want to help the business. They want to align to what's going on. I think to piggyback off of something that Adele said, it's really important to live your values and tie what you're doing to those values. So for example, if you're telling your company or your people that doing our best is a value of this organization, are you giving them the tools and the resources? Are you making policies so that they can do their best, right? Or are you over inundating them with meetings? Or are you giving them Thursday mornings or Friday afternoons with no meetings? One of the companies that I'm talking to now, they actually are giving their employees the chance to cash out 40 hours of PTO because they have a finite bucket. 40 hours of PTO if they don't intend on using, some of those hours before the end of the year. Another thing from a recognition standpoint, when I worked at Joybird, one of the things that we did is we gamified it. So we actually had core values badges. So you could peer-to-peer or manager across the organization, you could say, oh, you lived that customer orientation value. Here's 50 points and this customer orientation badge. And, when you get your employees competing, regardless of if there's a prize at the end, they love it because they want to be at the top of that leaderboard. They want to collect as many badges. So it became something really, really cool. But it wasn't just about the gamification of it. People started seeing who are the culture champions in our organization, who's actually living our values, and who can we go to if we ever want to do branding videos, or who do we want to make a part of the interview process, because you get to see the people that are living what it is that you want to do. The last thing I'll say on values too is that your values, as you go through these ups and downs as a business, the values won't necessarily change, but the way you live them does. So if you tell your employees, okay, our value is transparency, show them what that looks like. If you have a culture of learning, show them what that looks like and make sure that you're giving them those opportunities.
That's awesome. And just so everyone knows, like, Caitlin is the person I always go to about culture. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts too, especially something Karen said about transparency. Like, I think Popspots has really cool metrics around transparency and what they do. Can you touch on that for a bit?
Yeah, no, I think we also have our MVP bear. I love hearing that. That's like a very common theme right now. I think it's so important to recognize everything that's happening right now in your culture. Even those small wins, the things that don't seem very momentous, but actually are a big deal. Especially right now, recognition is important to call out. And it's not just like the huge sales gong or, some major momentous company shift. But, when we were all in the office, it was easy to hear someone be like, yes, I did it. Or like, oh, this is so cool. Those weak ties across, I could look over to our engineering team and somebody is just like, yeah, I finally figured it out. And you can be like, oh, that's amazing. And you hear more of these conversations about how things are going well, what's winning. But now we're siloed in our teams and siloed within ourselves because, we're virtual, we're trying to stay safe, and we're not having those conversations. So anytime you see something within your own team, whether it's a manager, a leader, or even just a fellow coworker, and like something exciting happens, that's something to celebrate. Especially right now, we have to take all the positivity we can. And I think what Karen, Adele, everybody's been saying about transparency has been crucial to keeping our team engaged. It's one of probably our number one core value. And one thing that our team feels most passionate about, and actually one of the reasons I wanted to work for Popspots. Popspots has a very strong core value in transparency. We have salary transparency for our entire team, including equity transparency. But we also have full open books for everyone on our team. And it's been vital to share what's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. And, if you feel like maybe you don't have a job tomorrow, like, especially with a startup, you look at like your fume date. You're like, do I even know that? Is that something I'm aware of? Like, what happens if I don't have a job in a month? Will I be able to find something else? It's a very stressful time. So we have that transparency to let our team members know, like, what's going on? How is our cash flow? When is our fume date? Also, what are the things that are affecting that? What are the teams that affect that? How are we doing this together, and how are we supporting each other in the growth of Popspots? It's been amazing, and we try and keep that a very strong open door policy that anybody, no matter what conversation is being had, we want to be able to have that conversation and have you a part of that. And if it is something sensitive, we always have a really good reason why. And there's very few of those conversations. But to have that transparency creates an investment, like an engagement for all of our team members, that this is something we're all doing together and we know what's happening. And we can feel confident as we're engaging in our work. I would say the one thing that really we hold very strongly to is transparency.
That's awesome. No, and I think that's amazing, right? Like, I think a lot of times what happens is the executive leadership is so scared to say what's really going on if things are not going great, right? Because they're like, oh, the team's going to leave. But I feel like it's actually the opposite. Like, the team feels really bought in and like they're part of it and they all work together if you're not scared to kind of say what's really going on. There's a question here, Caitlin, I think this is more for you. How do you measure burnout risk? You kind of talked about some of those metrics you use. Like, how do you actually do that?
Yeah, so we have a survey that we use that addresses different levels of the different dimensions of burnout, whether that's your feeling of inefficacy, feeling emotionally like exhaustion, whether it's physical, emotional, also your sense of cynicism towards what you're doing. And we have questions, and I'd be happy to share out if anybody's interested to email me. Happy to share that. And what we do is we have our managers have all of their direct reports take that survey. They set the cadence. I recommend at least every 2 weeks. Even if there's no changes, it's still a good conversation to have. Like, how are you doing? Like, what's happening? Or did a certain metric change? Maybe the overall risk didn't change, but maybe you're feeling a little bit more exhausted. Why did that happen? Or you went down in exhaustion. Like, what caused that, and how can we continue to replicate that pattern to continue to minimize the amount of burnout that you're feeling? Burnout is not about the individual, it's about the environment. And I think that's a common misconception, is you are not burned out, you are experiencing burnout from the circumstances that you're in. And then from there, we pulse to kind of track how that is going on a company-wide level. So we aggregate all of everybody's burnout risk together. And we measure that change for larger people programs, and also use that as a check-in for our benefits. Are we providing the proper health benefits, the proper mental benefits? And is there areas that we can improve on to continue to bring that risk level down and provide the healthiest environment for our team?
It's amazing. Thank you.
Albert, if I can just add to that, I think Caitlin made a really important point that it's worth repeating. It's important when you're surveying your employee population, whether it's for burnout or anything else, that you're not just looking at the greater organization, but you're looking by various departments or various markets, because sometimes you might see trends. Like, for example, at the Guild, we looked at, okay, how are the operations people feeling with these changes that are going on? How does the team in Miami compare to the team in Dallas, to compare to the team in Denver? It's super important that you look at where there might be pieces of your organization where you need to address some things.
Awesome. Thank you. So what I'd like to touch on now is, I think Zoom is everywhere, right? And people are doing all kinds of wacky things to make Zoom fun, like Zoom comedians or magicians or mimes, or like, it's a lot of crazy stuff, right? And so like one thing we've done at Mobile Tech is we had a speaker series. And it was really interesting because I kept challenging myself to try to get crazier and crazier people to say yes to come doing our speaker series. And so it kind of culminated in getting Stephen Wolfram to come talk to like my team of 20 about like all the crazy physics stuff that he's working on. And it's just like, wow, like, people are really into this. And I think our team, just a different point of view, to talk about something different, to make it light, I think everyone really enjoyed that. So like, I'd love to hear just like a couple things that you've either tried, or like a comedian that was great or that was awful, or like what has been working to kind of just something light and fun for your teams. Adele, what have you guys been doing?
Yeah, I mean, our favorite one that we just did recently was a citywide scavenger hunt. So we kept it very socially distanced, but we met in Zilker and had kind of like a whole itinerary of, it was a bingo card of like different kind of milestone, or like, places that you could go around Austin. You had to recognize them and know what they were. And there were some kind of like gotcha ones, like our original first office that only certain people would know, and so we were on a couple teams, and you had to go and like take pictures in front of those places and get a double bingo. So our team just loved that. We had such a good time with it. Our Slack was blowing up with everybody's pictures, and everybody was getting super competitive. And it was just like a really fun, awesome afternoon. And, then ended in Zilker and just had a socially distanced picnic. And, I think the whole team was definitely feeling the need for outdoor activity and some connection time. So that was wonderful, and arranged by multiple people on the team. And I loved it. I was so impressed.
That's a really cool idea. I like that. Caitlin, what did you guys do for fun?
Yeah, so for a while we were doing a weekly game time. It kind of changed on time. Sometimes it was during the day, sometimes it was at the end of the day. We've done all sorts of things in that time. We've done puzzles together. We found a website where you can literally build puzzles together, and I just kind of call it the puzzle hour, where it's really calming. You don't even have to talk. We're just there experiencing this together. We've done like battleship competitions, like the board game. Like, there's really cool leaders. There's a lot of really great resources you can find for your team just to relax and just have fun. We've done plenty of trivia tournaments, all themed. My advice for anybody who's interested in kind of getting something going for their team is just to embrace the cheese, like make it cheesy. It ends up being so much fun. Anybody on our team will definitely agree. I literally try and go as far as I can with it. But we've also really embraced celebrations, which I think is another really critical aspect right now, and having fun. I think in May, I swear half our team had a birthday, and so it's running out of ideas. But trying to make one unique is really, really important, and really going don't skimp on the celebration. We've had surprise parties where we've like coordinated with like cohabitants in their space to like deliver something with like a Google Meets hangout in the note, and then everybody's there for a surprise. Trying to tailor it to make everyone feel special and basically to recognize them in that moment has been really, really fun. And we've been trying things like book club, and we have all of our inside jokes and little one-offs, and trying to recreate team lunches. Anything and everything I think should be on the table for teams. You should try it. If it doesn't work, find out why, and to go to the next thing and make it even better.
Yeah, we had a similar experience. We tried to do a book club. We got through one book, second book, did not make it. And then it switched to like, let's just read an online article and let's talk about the article, right? So just kind of like scale it down to something much easier for everyone to do. Karen, what are you guys seeing for fun activities?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did at the Guild that I loved is we called them GECs, Guild Experience Committees. It was a great way for everything not to flow through the people department. So the 3 committees were active athletics, social, and then service and community. And those were led by employees across the organization. So the great thing is employees can get involved in the things they're most passionate about, and they're the ones leading those activities. And they're the ones convincing their people on their team or across the business to be a part of it. So I think when you take it away, although obviously the people department has to support it, but when you take it away from that structure and give it to the employees to run, you get a lot of great participation and a lot of great ideas and people who really want to be the driving forces behind that. That's another thing I think that really helps with engagement, is people feel like they're not just contributing from a work standpoint, but they're contributing to that work culture.
Cool. So like, what's crazy to me is, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic, which is very difficult, right? But that's not the only thing going on in the world. If you guys are not aware, there's a lot going on with race, a reckoning that's happening. There's the presidential election, which is bonkers. So like, I think there's so much going on outside of the office. I'd like to kind of hear from you guys. How do you support your team when all these current events are going on? And how do you talk about these difficult topics at work without being like overly political or like isolating members of your team when you may not know how they feel? Caitlin, I know we've talked about this recently, but like, what are your thoughts around some of that?
Yeah, so I know that it's pretty easy to kind of say, no religion, no politics in the workplace. Draw that strong HR line, if you will. But I think civic engagement in the workplace is critical. It's one of the last places that we all have to come together to learn from one another, experience different perspectives, because, now social media is tailored to where you can not listen to anything that doesn't mesh with your worldview. We choose our friends, and it's really easy to just turn off other perspectives and not hear the other side. So I think the workplace is really important for this, but it is important for it to be healthy and inclusive. And I think that takes a little bit of training. We had Nathan from Good Politics come and speak to our team to kind of lay down the foundation of, hey, how do we disagree with each other? I don't feel the same way, or my view might feel extremely personal for another person. And how do we come together and have a healthy discourse? And I think taking a moment to stop and say, hey, how do we talk, is a really important first step for your team. And it's something that you just don't do once and leave it alone. It's a common thing. And, that's also where you should bring in your values too. One of our strong values is everybody belongs. And we want to remind everybody, you may feel this way, but remember that other perspectives belong here as well. Mm-hmm. So there should be marginalization, or someone shouldn't feel alienated if they have they don't feel the way like it seems like everybody else is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And we also want to make sure that it's important to look at where you're having these conversations as well. It is overwhelming. I think, Albert, you and I talked about, it just seems like there's one major thing a day and it's like, whoa, hold on a second. What happened? And these are really sensational things that are really easy to bring up in the workplace. And sometimes the only place that we're having that social connection is our team meetings. But it's important to recognize where you're having these conversations and making sure that the other parties have an opportunity to opt out. These are not everyone wants to participate, or someone might be going something stressful, or there could be a really personal topic. And maybe they're just not ready to have that conversation or be a part of it. So I think it should also be on everyone's terms to have that conversation. So creating a Slack channel dedicated to, election talk or, other things that are going on in the community is really, really important so that you can have a really great dialogue and have it in the workplace with your peers, but also allowing everyone a little bit of a break sometimes just to kind of focus and get away from the news cycle.
Yeah, just mute that election channel for a while. Yeah.
Just maybe an hour or two.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to opt out every once in a while of these conversations.
Yeah. Karen, I know we've talked extensively about this. What are some of your thoughts about kind of talking about current events and how you do that?
Sure. I think, there's a lot been said lately about ERGs or employee resource groups within organizations, right? And I think the larger companies tend to be the ones with ERGs, but even if you don't have one as a startup, it's important to say, hey, we're having this forum, if you will, where we can talk about these things. And if someone on your team doesn't feel comfortable or isn't equipped to be the moderator, maybe you get someone who is willing to do that and who is willing to help create that psychological safety that people talk about, right? So people can share their feelings or can ask questions if there's a topic they're just not really well versed in. Things don't have to be super, super formal for you to give people a chance to speak and to learn. And I'm seeing a lot of companies do that now, where they're just taking, some time on a Thursday afternoon or during a lunch break to discuss things that they want to, or to learn because they don't know where to go to learn.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's something that we've started recently after I heard me and you discussed it. We've started like a women's group at work where they kind of get together and talk about kind of issues that they're facing, being moms, some of them in a pandemic and dealing with work, I think is really stressful and like a unique situation that is interesting. And then we have another group that's opt-in just to kind of race, right? Like, how do we talk about it? What are some resources? How do we share stories and share kind of experiences so we can all understand why it's so hard for some people, why it's so easy for some people, just to really understand our employees and what they're having to go through. Adele, what are some techniques that you guys use?
Yeah, I think like as, again, the founder of a smaller company, without people departments yet, a lot of it does come back on you and just the willingness to lean in and know that you're going to do it imperfectly and acknowledge that up front with everybody of like, hey, I'm probably going to put my foot in my mouth like 10 million times. So you guys keep me honest. But, it's in Brene Brown's words, I think it's a good year for learning rumbling skills and, how do we do that together? And we've just had some really beautiful kind of organic interactions as a team, particularly talking about race. And, then I think what's also very interesting is like we do, again, have that lens of who are our customers and what are they going through? And we have customers on all ends of the spectrum. And so while we chose to take a stand, as a company around Black Lives Matter, for example, knowing who our customers are and their audience and being respectful of, everybody on all sides of it and how we talk about it, I think was just a really important examination for us to do. And, even with current, like on the political spectrum right now, and kind of how perhaps the coronavirus pandemic is being positioned, at a leadership level, I think that there's some opportunities as a company and a brand to say, hey, here's what somebody is going through when grieving the loss of a loved one, through a pandemic, and here's what it means to support them. And, these certain messages may not exhibit good leadership, and let's talk about that. And let's talk about like how we want to show up for our customers. So I think in some ways, just given the nature of what we do, you know, a lot of it is like, we should practice these skills because we want to show up well for our customers, but we want to show up well for each other. And, you know, through that process of learning, I think it also can help kind of having that additional layer of, you know, we're looking at, you know, our customer base, and then it just so happens that really serves us as a team as well and how we choose to interact with each other.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you a follow-up question. So at least on our team, we've had a lot of like death in our organization this year, which is like extended family. Like, how do you, I know like your company specifically is amazing in how you try to change the thinking around death, but like, how do you do that with your employees? Like, how do you support people when they're going through like one of the worst things that can happen to them?
Totally. And I'm so glad you asked, because I think that that's something that, you know, I'm part of a VC thread with other founders, and somebody mentioned that, and one person was like, oh, I just try not to really address it. And I'm like, no, you know, don't do that. I think like what a lot of people don't realize about grief is that it lasts for a very long time, you know, and it's a process, and it's a long process. And so when somebody's first going to be going through it, they're in shock. They're going to be inundated with, you know, just support and people saying, how can I help? And, you know, in many ways it can feel overwhelming. Like you become kind of a project manager at a time that you can't even see what way is up. And, you know, so I think like feeling supported through that process and given the space and time that you need, but then that, you know, the message that's being reinforced is like, hey, we're here for you. We care. Like whatever you need, just let us know and we got your back. But then that beyond what is kind of the normal window of people showing up and caring, continuing to show up and care, like that's what will mean so much to somebody, because that's really, really uncommon. You know, and anniversaries are hard, and holidays are hard, and just knowing that I think is really important. And, you know, it's completely up to the person whether they are, you know, there's different types of grievers, and, you know, some people are going to say like, hey, no, I really want to get back to work, and like, this is what I need to process, not pushing on them to say, no, you need more time off. Like, let them tell you what they need. And if they need to come back, like that's okay too. But, you know, I think as time goes on, you know, just there is an opportunity to connect at a human level and have, you know, kind of subtle curiosity of just like saying their loved one's name and, you know, like, hey, like, what were they like, you know? And again, they may not be comfortable talking about that, and that's totally okay. And you want to back off. But what we've found, at least, and I think what really resonates with our customers, is they are so excited that you asked them that. And they're so genuinely like, they want to tell you all about why their dad was remarkable, you know, and what made him so awesome. And it can just be so refreshing for them to feel like somebody actually cared. And so it's like a very small deposit, you know, that I think people don't think to ask, and they're afraid to, and they tiptoe around it. And sometimes that can do more harm than good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think one of the things that I've kind of seen is like, if you make those good connections with your employees, like from the minute they start, then when something hard happens, the conversation's easier, right? It's not like you hired them and they haven't spoken to them, and then it's like, oh, I'm here to support you. They don't have a connection with you. It's not going to work, right? So like, it's really important to kind of keep that connection strong and ongoing, and support in good times. So when bad times come, it's natural to kind of open up and have someone to talk to. And I think that's totally key. So we only have a few more minutes. So I'd love to go to some questions really quickly. So one of the questions here is, what changes have you made to company culture that are going to stay in place once things kind of get normal, whenever that is going to be? Does anyone want to chat about that? Caitlin, you're already halfway talking.
Yeah, no, you heard it. You heard it almost coming out. You know, you're just starting to have these conversations. You know, there is a lot of uncertainty ahead of us. You know, I think for everybody, you know, we're going through dips, and we want to do what is safe and healthy for all of our employees and supporting their communities. So I think one of the biggest things that's probably going to continue is our movement towards a more flexible schedule that's based on the individual's productivity, efficiency, and how they do their best work. You know, is it half of the time in at home? Like maybe you're just better focused work in the mornings from your home, and then you like to pop into the office to do your meetings. That's okay. You know, we have a very trust-based organization, so we trust that you have the ownership of your area with our company, and your responsibility for growing it. And what that looks like is different. And it's different for mental health reasons. It's different from just like feeling engaged. And we want to give everybody the flexibility to do that. We've seen it has worked really, really well. I think that recently we just joked that, with naps have been a big thing, is learning about like, when is a nap really helpful for you to take during the day? And that's okay. We've had some different opinions, but I think like a little bit after lunch has been the most productive, and we would fully go into that's something that's all right, and we've learned that it's okay, and it helps us balance better. So we're really leaning into looking at the things that cause a better balance. And I think also one thing that we did was reevaluate our benefits and looking about what do those benefits mean and how are they giving you more life. And I think we're going to continue that mindset is, I think, Albert, you brought it up a little bit earlier about, the kegs, kombucha on tap. Like, do those really bring meaning to our culture, and do they enhance our people? And I hope those conversations continue to happen. We looked especially about our medical and health benefits. Like, how can we provide more support to our employees, but also their communities? How do we, a small company, healthcare costs are a huge thing. So how do we continue to expand dependent coverage, life insurance, short-term and long-term disability? How can we continue to find more benefits like that really support versus spending them on material benefits?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And one of the things I know, Caitlin, and you and I love is gusto. Like, it just makes it easy to add these amazing benefits to your team. And like, we're health insurance now, it's just so easy to get health insurance and life insurance and all these amazing benefits that really make a big difference, and 401k, and it's awesome. This is a really tough question. We've got 4 minutes. So we mentioned Black Lives Matter. There have been some cases of companies losing talent after companies state their stance. Should companies be concerned that this may affect the diversity talent pool they have on staff? And so, yeah, that's a really tough question, right? So like, knowing that, our country is so polarized and that you don't know exactly what side of the aisle people are on, how do you support Black Lives Matter when it's a core value without isolating some members of your team who may not quite feel that way? God, has anyone dealt with that? Karen?
I would say a couple of things. One, I think you should encourage your employees to speak up and support them, regardless of if the company takes a stance or not. You should support them voicing their beliefs in the most respectful way possible, and to have those conversations that they want to have. I have a friend in New York City who's a Black female, and she's a leader in a media organization that is known for not being so diverse and inclusive. But she wants to have those conversations with her coworkers, and sometimes it really weighs heavy on her because she doesn't want to feel like she's the educator of the group, but she'd rather do it than not do it. I think one of the pieces of the question too is, how do you keep them from losing people? I think you're seeing a lot of backlash because you have companies now who are doing what they can to hire and bring in diversity into the organization, but that's just one piece of it. If your organization doesn't have that inclusion piece, if people who come into your company don't feel comfortable there, it's not going to matter how many you bring in because they're just going to go out the door. And also, I'd say one of the most important things before you do any sort of DE&I initiative is, if your top leaders of your organization don't believe in it, it's never going to get off the ground. People across that executive level need to support that.
Yeah, I think we really had a hard time with this too, because a lot of our user base is very conservative. And so like, we really had a struggle with, should we make a public statement? Should we not? Is it going to isolate our user base? Is our revenue going to fall off a cliff? We ultimately decided to make a small statement because, diversity is important. We really want to focus on making our team more diverse and lifting up other voices. So that brings us to the end of our session. I want to thank the panelists first for being here, and thank you all for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, that was another question. I think Desmond can share our contact info. I'm okay with that. All right, everyone's good. So we're here. Please ask us questions. We want to make sure you have a strong company culture. And thanks for the opportunity. Desmond.
Hey, yeah, we can totally share your contact information on the Hop-In chat if that is okay with everyone. I'll make sure that gets done. Thank you so much for, one, answering those tough questions, but really having an interesting conversation. One of the things that I wanted to just touch on, Adele said something that was framed in the terms of loss, and I think that it really can be applied to anything within culture, but it's just about being transparent and having people tell you what they actually need across the board, whether it's grief, loss, or anything else. I think that is a number one culture value that that I really appreciate. But thank you all so much for being here, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Well, I can't believe we've done it, but this is the end of our track today. I'm so sad to see everyone go, but thank you so much for being here. And once again, thank you to our sponsor, Insperity, for everything that they've done for us. A couple of housekeeping things. We are going to go into networking. So if you want to meet some more people, click that networking button on the bottom right of your hop-in screen, and you can be launched into one-on-one meetings with some of the other people. We'll be back online at 12:45 for the sales and biz dev track. I'll be handing it over to a good friend, Erica. But in the meantime, network, and I'll see you there. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.